The state of New York has a long tradition of upholding the rights granted to others from other states and also from foreign jurisdictions. The state of New York has a long history of granting marriage rights where New York does not have such rights on our own books. For example, common law marriages. They exist in other states. They do not exist in New York. We have a time-held and time-tested tradition of honoring those marital rights. Same-sex marriages, marriage equality now in 2 other states, would come under the ambit of that interpretation of the law. We would extend to people who were married in other states, whether of opposite sex or of the same sex, the same equal opportunities in New York as we have granted those marriages traditionally that existed in other states by law or in foreign jurisdictions by witness. And so on February 1st of 2008, we reached an appellate court decision in the 4th Department in the case of Martinez versus Monroe County. This would uphold those same rights here in New York. On May 14th, the day before the Supreme Court of California granted marriage equality in that state, in New York, 24 hours earlier, I directed, through my counsel, David Nicenti, the councils of the agencies of our government to bring back reports to all of us on June 30th, demonstrating any possible conflicts such that we can be in compliance with the law. And that is how we have addressed this issue, so as to avoid any lawsuits, so as to avoid discrimination, so as to try to maintain the same laws that have existed in New York for decades. Any questions?
Adam Goldman, the Associated Press. Just to be clear on this, so what does this mean exactly, that New York is working toward condoning same-sex marriage licenses?
That New York recognizes, as our federal constitution mandates, that we would uphold the rights granted to individuals by other states.
Governor, it's Josh at New York One. Can you say a little bit just about how this is any different than how it was, let's say, before 14th of May? Because it was my understanding that Governor Spitzer had the same policy. I guess it just hadn't been codified in a particular letter.
That's right. We had not taken the action to notify the agencies. We wanted to make sure that in terms of the implementation, that if there were any difficulties in interpretation, that we had a chance to review it, and we asked the agencies to report back. So in many respects, the existence of this law has existed for a very long time.
Governor Marla Diamond, WCBS Radio. Can you answer critics who say that what you are doing is an end run around the legislature, which let this bill die last year in the state Senate?
This is not an end run around the legislature. If the legislature wanted to take an action, it could. The legislature has not provided for marriage equality here in New York. I'm an advocate for it, but that's not the reason that I came to this conclusion. I am taking the same approach that this state always has with respect to out-of-state or marriages conducted in foreign governments being recognized here in the state of New York. I'm following the law as it always has existed. And I would suggest if they went back and read the law, that they would come to a different interpretation themselves, even if they disagree with the concept of marriage equality. They would have to understand that I have not interpreted this law any differently. What I'm trying to do is to accommodate the fact that if I didn't take this action, I would leave this state open to lawsuits. I would leave the state treasury open to monetary damages, and I would be discriminating against individuals who are coming here from other jurisdictions who were allowed that right when it was common law marriages and other types of marriages, and now are suddenly being denied the right. And the court decision on this matter has been unanimous, and now we have an appellate court decision, and the appeal was dismissed by the New York State Court of Appeals. So I think, well buttressed in terms of the legal interpretation, and I think that perhaps the critics should get a little better informed.
Governor Michael Frazier with Newsday. Why didn't you make this public 2 weeks ago when this happened?
I'm not. It was transparent. It was in no way our attempt to hide it from anyone. Just took you all that long to read it.
Governor Warren Levinson from the Associated Press. So, if I understand it, you're saying that it's the responsibility of New York or any state to recognize marriages legally performed in any other state?
Well, not necessarily any state. A number of states have passed Defense of Marriage Acts, so therefore they have already acted on their own to deny that opportunity. New York is not one of those states. And so therefore there is no legislative edict that is preventing me from taking this action. It is actually the correct action because it will bring our agencies in compliance with human beings who have gotten married and now just want the rights that married couples have, the right to visit a spouse in a hospital, the right of intestacy, the right to pass a license after the death of a spouse, the right to be able to share in the cost of prescription drug medication, the right to be counseled if your spouse is injured or killed by a criminal justice agency. That's what we actually counted, I believe, over 1,100 different rights that domestic partners would not have because they're not married. And that's why many of us are in favor of marriage equality, and I'm one of them. But that is not the issue that compels me to send this memorandum around to the agencies. We are trying to be in compliance with the laws of the state as they have already existed.
Governor, it's Henry Goldman from Bloomberg News. When you assumed office, there was a lot of talk about your excellent relationship with Senator Bruno. Have you discussed this issue with Senator Bruno, and do you have any expectation that you can persuade Senator Bruno that this should be the law of the state of New York?
He's coming here this afternoon on another matter to visit me. I'm sure we'll have a conversation about it before he leaves. I'm trying to persuade him. I saw him yesterday, and I haven't been able to persuade him as yet. But it's an election year. Maybe the public will.
Governor Andrew Whitman, RNN, what kind of policy changes are we talking about here? If the state already recognizes legal marriages from outside jurisdictions, and these same-sex marriages would be legal in those jurisdictions, what's the difference? What's the change? Wouldn't the current, the status quo already recognize those legal marriages in other jurisdictions?
Yes, it absolutely would. The only change here is that some of the actions that the agencies take involve some interpretation of federal law, and there is no federal statute on this issue. And so that's just an example of where we just asked our agencies, if you see a problem, please report back to us by Monday, June 30th, and that's what they're doing. Otherwise, it was really just an attempt to make life a little easier for people who have gotten married out of state and are coming to New York.
Governor Melissa Russo from Channel 4. So can you just clarify for us what specifically will change that couples who were married outside of New York State did not have before that they would get now as a result of this?
It doesn't change anything. Couples married outside of state will be extended those same rights in New York as we always have. Couples who are now same-sex couples who are married out of state will be given that same opportunity by New York.
So they were never denied anything in the past because they only had a domestic partnership and not a marriage license?
No. They were denied several. All of the issues I was talking about are things you can't get from domestic partnership, and it's the reason that people who've lived together for a number of years would like to be married. They've had the problem of You can't bury the spouse because the spouse's family comes in and buries them. You can't visit the spouse in the hospital, and people who are family members of the spouse who they might not even have been talking to for a number of years get to come to the hospital and you don't. The two of you own a store together. One of you dies, the license doesn't pass to the partner because domestic partners don't have that opportunity. There are 11 or 1,200 of them on the books. This is why people who live together for a long time would like to be married. And as far as I'm concerned, I think it's beautiful. I think it's fine. I think regardless of the tenets of the religion of some and the belief of some, it is something that our government should allow for people. And it may be misunderstood in this generation, but still, as a government, we have to recognize that where rights have been granted in other states, it's part of what our federal Constitution was about when it was enacted in, ratified in 1787, that the states would respect other states' rights.
Governor Stacey Sager from Channel 7, am I to presume then that the New Falls weddings would not be included in this because they weren't legal?
No, they're not. They were not legal because New York State does not have a marriage equality statute.
Thank you.
Governor, any questions about lawsuits? Do you think that this will stand up to the lawsuits that you can anticipate will be coming down?
Actually, my fear was that it wouldn't stand up to lawsuits that would be coming down. In other words, if you have a valid marriage license and you're in New York, all of the court actions that have been taken has shown that we as a state would be liable if we did not take this action. In other words, we can't draw a distinction between who's on the marriage license. We've been respecting these common law licenses for many, many years.
Thank you very much. Also, in your post, could you tell me please what if there's a cost estimate to the state agencies, and do you have any idea if that'll impact what's going on in the private sector?
We don't anticipate any cost aspect to the state agencies. However, what we asked the state agencies to report back in June is to anything that would arise from this implementation that would be thought to be important would be reported back to us, but least of which would be cost.
And private sector?
There would be no effect on the private sector at all.
Has there been any reports earlier about any problems from any of the agencies that's trying to implement this?
Not to this point.
Thank you very much.
Do you intend to press for same-sex marriage in New York?
Excuse me?
Will you push for same-sex marriage to be legalized in New York?
Well, I already have, and that's my intention, but I don't want that to be confused with the fact that this is my interpretation of the law as it stands right now. This is not any change that I think needs to be made, and this is why I'm not making an end around anybody. And some of those busy legislators who think I'm doing an end around, maybe they should go into the legislature and actually work on something.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.